Throughout history and the centuries, there were many people who have been executed. Some of the most infamous female killers who were executed were known for their cruelty and evil. Some were considered more tragic figures, such as Ruth Ellis, the last woman executed in Britain. Ruth Ellis would today be considered a victim of abuse who was mistreated by many men throughout her life, but she would go to the gallows for the murder of her lover, David Blakely, outside of a pub. But the final woman executed in Czechoslovakia was a woman who was also greatly troubled, and she carried out a crazy and bizarre rampage and spree that resulted in the deaths of 8 people inside of Prague. For her crimes, Olga Hepnarova would go to the gallows despite the fact she was just 23. Join us today as we look at the brutal execution of the female Czech Rampage killer, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Olga Hepnarova was born on the 30th of June 1951 inside of Prague. Her father was a banker and her mother worked as a dentist, and it's believed to begin with that Olga had a normal childhood upbringing. Her parents were not particularly poor, neither did they experience financial hardship, but at some point in her childhood she began to have serious psychiatric problems and issues. She was someone who struggled to speak to others, and in 1964, at the age of 13, she attempted to take her own life. She had been prescribed medication and she tried to overdose. However, because of this incident, Olga then spent a whole year inside of a psychiatric hospital nearby. Following her release, she worked at many different jobs, but she could not hold anything down as she was let go within a few weeks of getting a new job. She trained as a bookbinder but remained in Prague, and then she began to work as a truck driver. Her employment history was unpredictable, and she may have got incredibly bored with what she was doing rather quickly. She then began to cut her family off and her father, and she then with her wages purchased a cabin that was moved to the village of Olesko. She lived here for a while and later sold the cabin and purchased a Trabant car with the money. But her father would, through one of his family members, inherit a farm. But for some reason, Olga Hepnarova had a vendetta against her father at the time, and she clearly tried to kill him. On the morning of the 7th of August 1970, she used petrol to set fire to the door in the living area of the farmhouse, and she wanted to destroy the house. At the time, her sister and 2 tenants were asleep, but they woke to the smell of smoke and put the fire out. Olga was not suspected of being involved, and she would later confess to this in 1973, and she said that she did this because of money disputes occurring between her parents, and she wanted to take action. It was clear that Olga was not stable, and that she was willing to carry out serious and dangerous acts to bring her family to its knees. She was willing to kill, but this mindset would take her down a very dark path. She had developed this mentality that everyone was trying to attack and hurt her, and she claimed that whilst on the street in Prague one day, she was set upon and was beaten badly. Olga also said that bystanders did not get involved and let her suffer. She believed that her life was worth remembering, but she decided to try and take action and to go out in a blaze of glory. She had planned to derail a train or to plant a bomb in a busy room, but she then claimed she did not have the expertise and know how to do this, and she then planned to carry out a mass shooting. She initially wanted to get hold of a firearm and then shoot people inside of Wenceslas Square in the new town of Prague, but then she decided that she would be shot dead immediately, and she could not find a suitable weapon to do the job. But as she had been a truck driver, she then decided that rather than a firearm, she would be more deadly behind the wheel of her truck. In January 1973, she had moved into room 502 in a hostel, and she lived here until the 10th of July 1973. But on the 10th of July, she then test drove a truck that she wanted to rent to use in the attack. Shortly after renting the truck, Olga would then commit her deadly act. At 1:30 p.m, she drove a Prague RN truck from the Defender of Peace to Strosmayer Square, which was found in Prague's 7th district. Whilst there, she revved up the engine and she drove her large truck onto the pavement and ploughed into around 25 people who were waiting for a tram. The vehicle then came to a stop, and witnesses thought she was a victim too, but then Olga, as soon as it happened, got out of the car and she claimed that she had done this intentionally. In the immediate aftermath, 3 people lay dead on the pavement, but many more were injured. After receiving initial treatment, 3 more people died, then a few days later 2 more would pass away. 12 more were injured. However, Olga had already admitted her attack in letters to newspapers. She wrote, "I am a loner, a destroyed woman, a woman destroyed by people. I have a choice, to kill myself or to kill others. I choose to pay back my haters. It would be too easy to leave this world as an unknown suicide victim. Acta non verba. Society is too indifferent, rightly so. My verdict is, I, Olga Hepnarova, the victim of your bestiality, sentence you to death." It was quite clear that Olga was not a well woman, but in the eyes of the court she was seen as a callous and out-of-control serial killer who had planned to kill as many people as possible. At her trial, reports emerged that she was aware of what she had done, and she did say she had no regret. As she had planned to kill, this was seen as evidence for intent of murder, and she knew that the tram stop she hit had a slope, which led to her truck getting more speed and causing more damage. She had previously driven the truck by the stop before, but she wanted more victims and waited till more people were there. On the 6th of April 1974, she was sentenced to death for murder, and she would be the final woman executed inside Czechoslovakia, as she appealed for a pardon, but this was then rejected. On the 12th of March 1975, Olga was taken from her cell to the execution chamber inside a Pankrac Prison. This had been used in the Second World War as a place where the guillotine took the lives of many people who were suspected of being involved in the Czech resistance. Olga told reporters before her death that she was very afraid of dying when it faced her, but the executioners who took her life would later say how when she was on death row, Olga had been resigned and depressed, but when it came for her to die, she became hysterical and she begged for her life. She was literally dragged by the guards kicking and screaming into the execution chamber, and she was led up to the gallows. A trapdoor gallows had been installed in 1954 as pole hanging was replaced. Inside the execution chamber, Olga was placed on an 18-inch square metal trapdoor. The executioner then placed a simple noose over her neck, and then it was tied to an iron bar, which came out of the wall above her. Final checks were made, then the hangman pulled the lever, and Olga Hepnarova fell just a few inches. Her neck was not snapped, and instead she slowly strangled to death, struggling for a few minutes, before she was pronounced dead. Olga Hepnarova is remembered today in history as the last woman who was executed in Czechoslovakia, as she made her way to the gallows in 1975. She was quite clearly a young lady who suffered a great deal throughout her life, and suffered with mental health conditions. But she turned into a cold-blooded murderer who tried to kill her family, but would then turn to making a bigger statement, and inside of Prague, she drove a truck into a group of people to kill as many as she could. She was only 23 years old when she was executed. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.